Welcome back to The Graphic, as we're now calling it. Laurence, McKenna, Jamie Slevin, welcome.
Laurence, hey mate.
We are here to say no thank you, Manchester United. No thank you, Newcastle. You've screwed us all.
Yeah, in a very creative way.
It's not creative. It was uncreative. They, as clubs, have screwed our Champions League chances for the fifth place team next season. Possibly their own Champions League chances for fifth place next season. One of the two of those clubs could be looking back and going, if we'd gone through in the Champions League group stage, even, Newcastle's result changes, United get a win and the other two teams draw, whatever, the fifth place could be what they rely on.
Yes, let's explain this.
Yeah.
You essentially have the 4 Champions League places as normal. Yeah,
not long ago, Jamie made a claim on the podcast that we were due 5 places in Europe this season, right? And obviously we always get 4, but with the league expanding, we get the 5, right?
Performance contingents.
Potentially.
But
the top 2 performing leagues in Europe get an extra place.
Which should have been us.
Should? I think it was you who jinxed this.
I know, I have to say sorry to Newcastle, Man United, Aston Villa, Brighton, Spurs. You'll be okay, I think.
Potentially Liverpool, but potentially not Liverpool. You'll see.
I think you'll be okay there.
Potentially City.
But the point is, your normal 4 teams will still get a Champions League place.
They've screwed our coefficient.
But they've screwed our coefficient because it's done year on year. Mm-hmm. So there's no... I always thought the coefficients were like this 5-year, 3-year thing.
I did think it was cumulative.
It's... I mean, unless I've misunderstood it, it's not this year.
It's also kind of weird because I guess... So there's like a point system in the Champions League, the Europa League and the Europa Conference League. And all teams contribute to a joint or a collective point system, which is then added together and divided by the number of teams competing, right?
But divided by the number of teams is the interesting bit, because it means you actually don't want to have a crap European side on the basis that if they get eliminated early, see Manchester United.
So it's not just bodies in the room, it's about having good bodies in the room, which is why, when discussing the Newcastle game against Milan, last night I was obviously like, okay, fair enough, they went out. This morning I wake up and I'm like, wait, they've actually screwed the coefficient for the league. They're screwing potentially other teams. They've screwed themselves potentially. And obviously they've screwed themselves in the Champions League. But them getting in the Champions League ahead of time when they didn't have a big enough squad, when they couldn't invest because our own league and everyone else has got financial fair play rules, has screwed us.
Yeah, and had they dropped into the Europa League, they'd probably done okay. They just struggled in the Premier League, but they'd probably have done quite well in Europe.
It's kind of a selfish versus collective thing, because selfishly, obviously it's great for them to be in the Champions League in the short term, but in the long term, they've played more games, which has tired the team out and potentially given them such a gap to overcome that now they might not get in the Champions League next season. 6
of the last 7 seasons I read, England would have got the second.
Wow.
This extra place. And this year, it's Germany and Italy who are ahead of us.
Depends on now in the next round who makes it through the next bits. And actually, it's fair to say that maybe, so you get like 4 or 5 points, depending on, I think it's 4 points for anyone who makes it through any group stage. Then in the next set of levels, which is round of 16, quarterfinals, semi-finals, final, the points are kind of varied. So I think you get 1 point for every quarterfinal, semi-final, and final you make, which doesn't seem right. Like it should be weighted if we have... I mean, should it be weighted? Maybe it shouldn't be weighted.
Or if you win it or something.
If you win it, surely there's like an extra 5 points or something there. But then maybe that is not the point of the coefficient. The point of the coefficient is to try to fairly give the league out. And actually, if you have the same winner every year, it doesn't help.
It also, the Conference League may just be a source of coefficient points for England.
Brighton, Aston Villa, West Ham.
Yeah, so this year it's just Villa.
Yeah. But
last year it was...
No, Brighton go through. Yeah, they'll drop in.
But you know what it was that... Like, the Europa Conference League is 1 year old. Mm-hmm. So we don't understand... Or 2 years old. Roma and then West Ham. So we don't really understand it yet. But is it just going to be upper mid-table English sides winning it every year? We don't know. There's not been a big enough sample size. But if Villa win it this year and West Ham won it last year, then you might look at it and go... Oh, that's just where England gets the coefficients. Like, who's the torchbearer for our 5th place?
But also in the Europa Conference League, I don't know how many points you get. Like, I think there's... So the points aren't all equal from what I can see on the ESPN.com article that I was just reading for every stage. So I think the group stage is equal, but then making it through in the Champions League, round of 16, all these kind of things might be slightly more weighted. But yeah, so I see what you're saying though. Broadly, the point is Manchester United and Newcastle United have screwed the Premier League's coefficient this season by not making it through groups. Newcastle, you can go, fair enough. Dortmund, PSG, Milan. It was potentially the hardest group. But, you know, the results against PSG, no points against Dortmund, kind of screwing it against Milan.
Caveat, had they not had the penalty decision against them in Paris, they probably go through. Because they're not relying 100%. On other results. Sure. So they actually were quite a little bit unlucky.
Unlucky, but there's also real questions, or I think a real place that Eddie Howe can work on with the team, and something that I think a lot of people will begin to question soon is Eddie Howe's game management. Like, there have been a number of games this season where it's not about the team being tired, it's not about the team being, you know, underserved in terms of people on the field. It's about the management of the game and his notes to the players, him getting the players to manage the game properly for him. There have been positions this season where they've been in strong positions or should have been in better positions, and they've just not managed it. They've gone, like against Liverpool, for example, they screwed themselves. They could have shut that game down, but Klopp, I mean, credit to Jurgen Klopp, came up with a very smart tactic, but Newcastle didn't shut that game down. Newcastle were up last night, and they screwed themselves. They could have managed the game differently. Now, arguably, you know, saying manage the game differently is one thing, but to be a top four side, to be one of the imperial powers within Europe, you've got to be able to manage games. And that's what City do it all the time. Real Madrid do it all the time. Barcelona don't really seem capable right now, but you get my point.
I think it's stages of development.
Juve did.
They're not used to playing these fixtures. And they're also, you know, after the last few years in the Steve Bruce era, probably not that used to being in winning positions all that much. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a new thing for the players.
100%. And that's fine. It's not a criticism. That's why I didn't say he's terrible at. I said he needs to work on, or the team need to work on, rather than Newcastle will never be able to manage games. There's a big difference on those two takes, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Also, it's worth saying with Newcastle, it's not just that they've got a small squad and injuries and not a huge amount of depth. Like Harvey Barnes was depth and then got injured.
Yep.
That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They also play so intensely. And it's hard, I think, to keep that up, especially like, you know, they lost 3-0 to Everton. Or they lost to Bournemouth and Trippier went to the fans and said, we're exhausted.
Soz.
It's hard though. Like, they play football that isn't necessarily sustainable for a whole year. Didn't Klopp have a thing where he went to, at the start, it was like knackering, and then he worked out like, oh, you kind of have to conserve players a bit.
Well, yeah, like he always tried to do some squad management, but I think also back in that era, fitness was slightly different when he first started doing gegenpressing. I feel like sports science has kind of really progressed, or at least had a lot more funding in the last few years. It was probably more progressed and latent or lagging in the game. And then more and more we've learned, you know, red zone has become a real thing and a mention now. A couple of years ago, you wouldn't have even known about that. You would have just gone, he looks tired. And, you know, you probably would have gone, you got to play through that, or, you know, it's part of being an athlete or whatever. Whereas now we're very conscious of managing these strains and stresses on players' bodies. And to an extent, like, I can understand that. It's not really, it's very difficult. And I think I saw Statman Dave or someone yesterday saying, like, you can't really send a player into a game saying, you know, like, foot off the pedal a little bit. Like, there was this question around whether Bruno Fernandes deliberately got a yellow card in this game or was conscious of it going into the previous Manchester United game to get out of playing the Liverpool game. And Dave made a good point. He was like, if you go into any match as a player thinking, I can't get a yellow, you're kind of not really ready to compete, because the yellow is there as like, oh, you've crossed the line, but this is a warning sort of thing. Especially in midfield now. Like, you're always going to be late on a tackle. He got the yellow card for something stupid, so maybe there's a whole other point there. Like, it was like bitching to the referee or something. But that's not the same as going into the game and being conscious.
The margins are so, like, it's, if you miss a tackle by a split second, it's a booking.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to get a yellow, you have to, like, not make tackles. So I think he's right about that. Just one more thing on Newcastle is, like, this year more than any other, I've been so aware of injuries.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, football fan, you understand injuries.
They had a lot last night.
But, you know, between, like, Spurs, it has been incredibly obvious. And Newcastle, I mean, they've lost for different periods of time. Botman, Cher, Harvey Barnes,
do you want me to read
Tonali.
Who's out right now? Harvey Barnes, Pope, Murphy, Anderson, Botman, Willock, Manquillo, Target, obviously Tonali out for different reasons. Lewis Hall hasn't been a regular starter in the side. Sean Longstaff played last night. Dan Burn played. Isak, Gordon, Trippier, Lewis Miley. Like, there's a lot of names. Shah had a great game last night, I thought Shah was really prominent, but playing alongside Jamal Lascelles.
And like, take Willock.
Club captain. But you get my point.
Take Willock, for example, though. Like, really, really decent player. But more than just being a decent player, he gives someone else a rest.
He gives either Joe Linton or Anthony Gordon gets a rest last night because Willock comes on and they go and be busy. Go and get into the midfield.
Murphy started on the right wing in the first Champions League game. That was great.
I get what you're saying, right? I understand that. The situation of Newcastle's goal, though, wasn't from being tired.
No.
The situation of Newcastle's goal was that Fabian Schär decided to go forward and take a risk. Newcastle took a risk. He went forward. There was like a little 1-2 that didn't come off, which was never going to come off because look at it. When you look at it on TV, you go, it's not a 1-2. It's not going to work. Now, maybe on the pitch, it's a different situation. You can't quite see. It clearly wasn't the thing to do at that point, though. It clearly isn't a good idea when you're trying to exert more and more and more pressure to push forward when they've just brought on 2 pacey wingers or one pacey winger and someone else, can't remember who else it was. They just brought on players who can damage you on the counter-attack and you go, I will break our defensive structure. Like, that's in-game management. It just is. Like, I'm sorry. I think there's got to be times where I get that we're in a bit of a good period here, and we're in a period of good feeling towards Newcastle, but also towards Eddie Howe. But I think we have to question elements of the coaching. We have to question elements of, the way they manage the game, because I get it. Like, it was out of their hands anyway, really, because if PSG and Dortmund and the result, they could have been in the Europa League. Europa League would have been a disaster for them going into the second half of the season. Competition that they don't want to be in. Competition that is good for our coefficient, but isn't really what Newcastle are aiming for.
One question on the Europa League for them.
Yeah, but knackers them out.
Do you think they would view that as shit? We could get back into the Champions League by winning this.
Maybe, but I think overall the club would be much smarter to aim for top 4.
But I don't think they're getting. I mean, if you, and this is a little bit loose, but if you say City, Liverpool, and Arsenal,
are
like in that top 4, and they might not be properly, but they roughly are.
But Newcastle won't have projected that, say, Spurs would be better, Villa would be better. It doesn't really matter for Newcastle. They just want to be better than everyone. But I get what you're saying.
I'm just saying there's probably 1/2 places available.
There's only one place available in the Europa League winners. So, it's a long competition and they don't have the squad depth. So,
and there's probably some good, and there are always good sides in there.
And Liverpool are still in it. There are loads of really big teams. There are teams that have dropped out the Champions League now. So Milan will be in it now. In fact, if you go through some of these standings, there are some really good sides who will be in so Feyenoord, bad example.
I think Newcastle will be one of the better sides in there.
Yeah. Young boys, though, have gone through.
Yeah.
Horrible side to play. I'm not choosing good examples.
But there'll also be good sides in the Europa League.
Galatasaray. I wouldn't want to draw Galatasaray in the next round. I also wouldn't want to draw... Okay, Lens. Like, it's a bad example. But the point is...
But hey, there's some very good sides in the Europa League.
Sides that have challenged Arsenal, Manchester United. Like, Galatasaray took United apart. Although United were there for the taking.
Side note, how like celebration of like English football would Brighton Newcastle be Europa League final?
Oh, amazing.
It's so FM.
How cool would it be, though, if it would have been cool to have, like, I think I'd love, Newcastle, if they were to stay in Europe, need classic European fixtures. That's why they were kind of blessed with Milan, Dortmund, and PSG. I always want to say Barcelona. I think they've had some classic fixtures, but they've kind of gotten carried away with the classicness rather than everything else. Now, the opposition argument to that, and what I hear Newcastle fans already saying is, well, we were just happy to be there. It was a heady days. It was a good reminder of the Sabobi era. Blah blah blah. That's not really what the club are aiming for right now. Your fans, like, you want the club to have a long-term sustainable strategy. And cool, like, these nights are good. Those nights against Milan are terrible because of your poor management.
Well, here's another question for you then. Do you think, looking back now, they would have taken, I mean, maybe it's a really obvious question because they're out, but they would have taken a really dull group. a dull group that wasn't quite as strong.
I don't know if they'd have...
Because if you gave them young boys Lens and I don't know,
Feyenoord, something like that,
and
right.
it's like okay,
it's dull compared to that, sure.
but here's another.
I don't think they'd take it, but that's not my point. The point is you should still be able to do game management against AC Milan, PSG, and Dortmund. Like it's irrelevant who you're playing. There are games where they should have managed them better.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, there's different. I think as a manager, right, there's different types of challenges. So you have like the challenge where you go away to a big side and like, how do we get a result? You have the challenge where you're the favourite, and one of the challenges is, oh shit, we're ahead with half an hour left.
Yeah.
How do we not drop too deep, but also not take too many risks? Like, what's the balance to manage the game? And Eddie Howe hasn't, as of yet, like nailed that.
Maybe that's a tooling thing, like a kind of they don't quite have the tools to be a not counter-attacking side, but they don't quite have the tools to be a team that if they're on the back foot, they're not on the back foot. If you're managing a game, you're not on the back foot. But you get my point. If you're not trying to be as offensive, they don't quite have the tools to hurt you, to scare you on the counter-attack. Isak, good player, might not have the pieces around him. Gordon, fantastic. I think probably one of the best up-and-coming players in the league. But will he always win the ball high up the field? Is it, with his
the other question,
diminutive...
The other thing here is Newcastle kind of beat you in moments. They're so intense.
Sure.
And that just means when the intensity drops off, they look vulnerable.
Feels relieving.
Yeah, and they give you a chance. I mean, the best description I ever heard of this was Brazil in 2014.
Good year.
It was Brazil beat you in moments. Mm-hmm. They were like really average, and then David Luiz would score a free kick.
That was the Neymar World Cup.
That was when they lost 7-1 to Germany.
Where he broke his back.
Where he broke his back. So was it 7-1?
Yeah, 7-1, 7-2.
7-1.
7-1, 7-2. 7-1, 7-2. Famous result in Brazil. Not so much here.
Not so much here.
Not so much here, but very much here. I remember watching that, and it was very confusing. That was a good World Cup.
That was notable mostly for the fact that when Daniel Sturridge did the celebration and like looked up to the gods to thank Jesus, it's like, do you know how low you are on God's list, Daniel Sturridge, in Brazil? You're like 200th. In Brazil, you're like not even getting a look in.
I think
in England, you're quite high up the list.
God literally went, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Oh, look at you with the hardcores.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Have you seen the statue?
By the way, he did the Subway celebration first because it was sponsored.
Yeah.
Then
really?
got his goal. Yeah.
What's the Subway celebration?
It was
Is that a Subway?
I think so. Or there was some Subway celebration he did,
really?
Sponsored by, and then was like,
and then
oh God, thanks, pal.
Yeah. Thanks.
To my sponsors.
This was very like Daniel Sturridge in that era.
No, I was going to say.
It became that, but it was like it wasn't, it wasn't that, like where it's like that, right? It was that. It was it became like a weird thing. Didn't look good.
Was our manager?
I didn't really like him scoring in that era. I liked him scoring. I thought he scored some amazing goals for Liverpool. Go back and look at the compilation of goals that Daniel Sturridge scored for Liverpool. Some great goals, even on the Klopp. No, it was Rodgers.
He scored the. He scored the one against Chelsea. Remember when he was like.
Everyone remembers that goal again.
Because he wasn't in the side.
Good goal.
He wasn't in the side.
He was Divock Origi of that era.
He was the.
Although I think Divock Origi was Divock Origi, but he was
Steve,
still Divock Origi.
What's Divock up to now?
Didn't he go to Milan, and then he went somewhere else?
I think he's Forest.
I think he's at Forest now. So he went to Milan and then Forest. So I don't think he's getting a lot of game time. Yeah, Nottingham Forest.
There was a description of Batshuayi, who also being Belgian and sort of like one of these like poachery type centre forwards. I always used to think of him, and Origi is quite similar.
You know what? He was a good player. I really enjoyed watching him, but he wasn't what we needed.
Is he the definition of a cult player?
Sturridge and I think Origi kind of are, although Sturridge is more than a cult player. Sturridge was so capable with the Suarez. People forget SSN. SSN? SS?
SS.
No, Suarez. SSS, yeah.
SSS.
Who's the N? Oh, Suarez.
You're thinking Neymar, Suarez, SNM.
SNM.
You're thinking SNM at Barcelona.
No, I think I called it MSN. Because SNM is a whole other genre. SSS was good, where it's like Suarez, Sturridge, Sterling.
And then you had Coutinho in there as well.
Yeah. That was a good side. Coutinho used to do this move that you just couldn't stop.
The shoulder.
He'd drop the shoulder, go on the inside left, and then just shoot, and it was like, goal. You just couldn't stop him. It was kind of like Robin, where it was like, I know you've only got 1 foot.
Doesn't matter.
I don't know how to stop that 1 foot.
Or like Doku. It's not quite the same, but I saw this compilation of, it's like Doku only has 1 move, ... and no one can stop it.
Works every time, weirdly. Like, every time.
Like, and because he's like 5'6"?
Yeah.
And it's like, he's just got a lower center of gravity than you.
God love him. I quite appreciate Manchester United this season. We did a podcast about them the other day. Multiple comments. Just one comment said, you best win this weekend. Wasn't really criticising United in a sense of like, but Liverpool, United is this weekend. If ever there was a time for Liverpool to play United, it's probably like, I don't like it when they're hurt like this. When it's like they've just gone out of the Champions League to a pretty sloppy, like it was not, Bayern barely tried.
I heard in The Guardian, they called it euthanasia. They called it...
the performance. Why is it their fault?
Because it was just slow and...
So you said the youth in Asia, right?
Oh,
bad,
yeah, they were playing midfield.
They were playing midfield, yeah. No, I get what you mean. I guess I know it's the owners. I know it's everything else. Still got to be better than that.
Yeah, I think the criticism was, it's all about balance football. You can't be too defensive or too attacking. And in order to give themselves a defensive base, they sacrificed so much going forward that they had 1 shot on target, which is weird because Bayern had nothing to play for. Yeah. And you're at home and it's Bayern Munich. And it's also weirdly the last ever Champions League game in this format in the group stage.
So that's that. Yeah.
Which has been very quiet.
Yeah, no one's really talking about that. I feel like UEFA want to kind of usher it in quite silently. They don't want like a midway through the season kind of like, by the way, the new thing is coming sort of thing. But I've already noticed they've done some sponsored posts.
Really?
With influencers going. So stuff like that George Stokey guy, that guy who's on Twitter who's like always paid by some rich guys to just post random crap.
No, I don't.
Like he got paid by Qatar during the World Cup to go, seems like a great World Cup so far, ad. I was like, this isn't effective advertising,
Sure.
By the way, advertising doesn't work if the actor in the ad goes, it's an advert, by the way. You go, yeah, cool, okay.
You see them done well though, like on Instagram, where people like sketch comedians will do ads, but it'll be a sketch.
Yeah, which is fine. I don't mind it. It's just I don't like it when it's someone trying to look like they're doing moralizing. They've been paid to moralize.
Being paid to moralize is a fascinating topic.
Well,
because it's a topic for another.
Isn't it an oxymoron?
Well, probably, but not necessarily, which is why it's interesting.
So he tweeted, can't wait for the 36-team format in the Champions League. It looks, in fact, let me just find the exact tweet because I think Thogden replied to it and we'll go from there.
There's an interesting comment here. So the 30, just for context while you find it, 36 teams, 1 league, and they play on the Swiss system.
Right, so that's what he says. He says, from next year's Champions League, it will be the Swiss-style system. I don't think we need to say Swiss-style. I think it's just the Swiss system, but sure. Should we split this Swiss-style? No, doesn't work. 36 teams, that means that basically you rank so if you go for dinner and split it Swiss-style, you rank the table in terms of strength, and then the stronger people pay more, and the weaker people pay less.
Yeah, or it's like everyone who got like the chicken.
Yeah.
They like then sit together on that end of the table.
Right. And the coefficient for the next dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
36 teams will compete in one big league table as opposed to groups. Each team will play 8 matches against 8 different opponents. This guy's just basically taking this off Wikipedia. The top 8 in the league will advance to the knockout stages. Those who finish 9th to 24th will compete in 2-legged playoffs to join the last 16.
By the way, how dreadful is that?
Exciting.
But you know what's dreadful about that? There's 36 teams and only 8 of them go out.
I'm not sure that I can...
That's so many dead rubbers.
I'm not sure I can keep up with it.
Also, you're telling me I'm going to have to watch like the 3rd game of the group stage of 8 is going to be Young Boys versus Genk. And it's going to be a dead rubber because they're guaranteed both of them more or less to finish between 9th and 24th.
Would it be better overall because it gives people like... How can I put it? Like, not like Newcastle, a different chance. Like over those games, it strikes me as something that could be just a little bit better for Manchester United this season possibly get through because Manchester United in the 36 team structure will finish in the top 2/3.
No, it's crap for that reason though. Because it takes all the jeopardy out, and it takes the jeopardy out of 8 games. So it's like more games with less jeopardy. The one thing that is nice about it,
risk.
Yeah, one thing I do like about it is if you work out how the fixtures will be played, everyone who wins their first game goes over here. Everyone who draws their first game goes over here. Everyone who loses their first game goes over here. Right. And you play people with the same records as you. So
So it's not, you don't know from the start of the season?
No. Swiss system, unless I'm wrong, and I could be.
Surely not. Although maybe
I think the way the Swiss system works is you play people with the same record as you.
How do teams book hotels?
It's a great question, which makes me think maybe I'm not right. But I think a Swiss system goes, if your record is 2 wins, 1 loss, they'll try their best to pair you with someone with 2 wins, 1 loss.
I think it must be, that would be insane. I feel like
that's it.
Insane, but also amazing. I feel like it would basically they'd have to decide pre-season, otherwise teams are going to complain like we can't get a hotel or we can't get travel or whatever. It's going to make travel exorbitant for these sides.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So
maybe they get supplemented.
Competitors meet 1-on-1 in each round. This is a Swiss system tournament on Wiki.
1-on-1. Yeah. I actually like the idea of introducing a third team there, but a neutral third team who's just there to fuck about.
Yeah, exactly.
So
win
no
the
investment.
Ball, knock it out to play.
Yeah. Just literally when you're throwing goal, there's just, Virgil van Dijk, if he's from the Europa League, just bang, see ya.
So this is how it's done. Competitors meet 1-on-1 in each round and are paired using a set of rules designed to ensure each competitor plays opponents with a similar running score. I.e., if you win your first 3 games, you'll play the other team that's won their first 3 games.
So you can't even plan for who you're going to play, when you're going to play them?
That is what I'm saying. I'm saying it's going to change.
That's kind of cool.
Well, see, the reason it's cool too is it means that points differences will be much closer. Because if you win your first 2 games, you're going to have a really hard third game. Whereas if you lose your first 2 games, you're going to have a much easier third game. So what this tends to do is to make the scores a little bit tighter.
Which throughout the season then, or it's not a season, is it? But throughout the table, it then makes it more interesting because it keeps everything a lot closer, supposedly.
Yes.
And therefore the stronger sides really are the stronger sides. Although, actually, no. Early on, that's the case. And then later on, I suppose the stronger sides are going to win anyway. But later on, does it not make it more of like a mulch?
Okay.
Why do you earn an easier fixture?
Actually, although, even though that is what a Swiss system is in the abstract.
That's not what the Champions League are doing.
That is not what the Champions League is doing. Because it says each team, without giving too much info, will be drawn to play 8 matches against different opponents.
Yeah, so I think that's the way it's going to work. I still think there will be pots and coefficients, and they'll basically be drawn it'll be Swiss. That's why I think it's Swiss style and not a Swiss.
Oh, hence the word style.
Style.
It wasn't just a clunky phrasing.
It's like when someone goes, that's cheddar style cheese. It's not actually cheddar.
Here we go. The key difference is that the chess format, which is how they do it.
Chess?
Yeah, it's Swiss styles in chess usually. The key difference is the chess format decides the team's next opponents after each game, whereas in the Champions League, all group stage fixtures will be known at the start of the season.
And weighted, basically.
Okay,
but it's still pot weighted.
So it's not actually a Swiss system. It's a Swiss style.
Which is why the word style is so key, which, that whole tweet I just read you.
Credit to him.
No, but I just read that whole, credit to George Stokey, or whatever the fuck his name is.
Yeah.
I read that. He explained what I already knew, but didn't explain the Swiss style system, which is what I actually wanted to know about.
Which is the only actually interesting bit.
Yes. The rest of it, I'm like, so you mean a league?
A league where not everyone plays everyone.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? I'm not a massive fan of it. I will say this. Some people say that sounds like Thogden himself said that sounds like a Super League. I'm not particularly a fan of that. I think basically here's what's going to happen. This season will finish. There'll be a load of compilations, and this will be the end of a footballing era because we've gone. The Champions League as we knew it is now over, right? There is a new style and format of Champions League that we like or don't like. Loads of people go, I hate it, I don't like it, I don't want it. Fine. But over time, what we will see is more and more influencers will go, love it. This has changed the game. It is better. It is blah, blah, blah. Because people want to go to games. They want to work with UEFA. They want to get in at the top. They want to get in with sponsors. And if they're slagging off the Champions League in its new format, they're not going to get there. So we'll see in 1 year's time, when that league is ending, roughly, maybe it goes on a little bit longer, we will see people saying, I love this or I hate this or whatever, but we'll see a lot more people like it because they want to get in with UEFA in the Champions League and they want to be there.
To burn my absolutely non-existent bridges with UEFA.
But potential bridges.
It's a shit idea. And the reason it's a shit idea is it's too many games. Also, it's weird to be in a league where 24 of the teams, you won't play against, but more than that.
You got 48 of them?
No. Oh. What I'd like to say.
I want more teams that don't play.
The reason why a 4-team group works well is there's kind of jeopardy top 2, bottom 2. There's a split. And you're constantly going, am I above or below that line?
And the third, you still get something.
And exactly. Which maybe makes it less jeopardy. And I actually also think that's a dumb rule.
By the way, Newcastle United and Manchester United both went out of the Champions League. Absolute.
Yeah, and finished
finished bottom of their group.
Newcastle,
neither of them got the Europa League.
Newcastle have more of an excuse if you look at the group.
Absolutely.
I mean, FC Copenhagen went through.
Yeah.
How much did they? Oh, well, at least finished above United.
They did by about 3 points, I think. Yeah, but that's really not on. It just isn't.
But the point is, the jeopardy is, imagine like on match day 5, of 8, you don't know whether you're above or below that line. You don't know whether like you need to get a point, 3 points. There's so many fixtures, so much uncertainty. It kind of feels like there's no jeopardy.
Does it not also make you play harder because you have to basically play through the jeopardy?
No, so I think teams, Premier League sides will rest players in the Champions League group stages. In fact, I know they will for 8 games. For 8 games where they're guaranteed to basically finish in the top third, and if they don't, they're going to finish in the middle. You're going to get, and if you have a big fixture on Saturday and it's Wednesday,
you'll rest a set players.
Oh, totally. Whereas you can't really get away with that
at the moment.
At the moment, because if you lose a game in a 4-team group, someone else has won a game.
The real goal is to streak. You want to have a streak of.
You need to win your first 4 and then just rest players.
Just be cool. Which is pretty much what City did. Even then, they won with their third string, whatever that is.
By the way, Calvin Phillips could have got sent off, and I'd have been so gutted for him. Do you think Calvin Phillips to? I
think someone in January.
If Liverpool?
No.
How come?
I just think there's other options.
Yeah,
Liverpool won't take a risk on that. Not midway through a season. Not when Pep said what he said about him.
In summer?
No.
Last summer?
I think there's other. I just think Liverpool thought there were other options. They would rather probably gone for Endo than Calvin Phillips. I think they needed someone who could hit the ground running. And maybe Phillips could do that, but I just think with the positive, strong rebuild that Liverpool have and had, I just think it's a bit why are you doing that? Why would you jeopardize all? And I'm not saying he's a toxic player. I'm not saying he's about all these kind of things. I just think it's just not fair, really. It's not really nice, is it?
What about Arsenal? I've seen that touted.
Don't mind it. Just don't think it's. I don't think he's going for a cross move here.
You think he's going for a down
Villa.
move? Well, Villa, Newcastle.
Don't mind Newcastle.
They've got Tonali. I mean, he's obviously banned, but Tonali.
Tonali's not Phillips though. Phillips and Tonali
play together.
Phillips almost frees up
Tonali.
Guimaraes. So you go Guimaraes on the left, Phillips in the middle, Tonali on the right, or in the time that Tonali's out, you go Joe Linton, Phillips, Guimaraes.
That makes sense.
That is a formidable, relatively, midfield. Obviously not, it's not Xavi and Iniesta Busquets, but it's a really good Premier League midfield. And if they'd have done it before all the fuss, so say he still played for Leeds now, and he hadn't have had all this time off, and Pep hadn't have gone, I'm not sure.
Man United, I've seen that.
I don't mind that.
It's a little bit of a weird one for obvious reasons. Leeds and City, to then go to United.
Yeah,
but it would in theory free up.
He's a Leeds boy though, isn't he?
Yeah. But it would in theory free up somebody, one of Eriksen or Mount, to play a little bit further of the pitch.
I think it would free up Eriksen to go to another club, and I think it would free up Mount to go further down the field. You're right, or just to do more of what Mount does. That's 2 very busy players in there that I like. I love that Calvin Phillips. I think he's a great player. I just think personally, if he came to Liverpool, I'd go, cool. That means Klopp knows that this guy is workable. I just feel like that's not quite the move, maybe. I feel like there's maybe just another move in Liverpool. And they, since missing out on Bellingham, now I'm alternative FC again. I I don't want Bellingham anymore.
Yeah.
You can keep him. Keep your mainstream.
You're for the
guy.
hipsters. You're for the hipsters.
Yeah. Actually, while we're talking about Bellingham, we should talk about this for a second. I might make a whole video about it, but I want to get your view on it. Trent Alexander-Arnold has 2 years left on his contract at the moment at Liverpool, right? That's a fair amount of time.
I'm surprised it's that little though.
Right. And there are theories, and I think that maybe some of these theories are planted by
Madridistas,
possibly people who want to renegotiate a contract, who go, he could be a Galactico. I agree with that. I think he'd actually be he'd be Beckham level. I don't think in terms of profile. He's wearing the Predators. He's clearly one of Europe's biggest young talents. He's not even young really anymore, but he's clearly one of Europe's biggest talents. At Madrid, the guy's just pinging it around. That's Zidane and who's another?
Beckham.
Yeah. Bellingham is Zidane or Kaká.
By the way, him this description of him going to Real Madrid and just pinging it around is so true.
Yeah.
That's what he'd be doing there.
Yeah.
He'd wake up and go, get the Predators on. Oh, that's a switch. Oh, that's a cross-field pass.
That's it.
And that would just be his life.
And I get it. I feel like it's one contract too early. It might also be, by the way, be dependent on... Obviously, I'd love him to stay at Liverpool for the rest of his career. I'd love him to be Steven Gerrard. If he went to any other Premier League club, unforgivable, never go to another Premier League club. But if he went to Madrid, I'm sort of I get it. Bellingham's kind of changed the...
perception or how doable... Real Madrid, by the way, is the club where it would make the most amount of sense, I think.
I think going to Munich, I'm a bit
no,
I get why Kane went there, because no one else essentially wanted him and Munich really made the case. That's not me being derogatory. I get it. I think he went there and thought, we can win the league here. Fair enough. You've got a title. You know what it's like. You can come back and when someone goes, how would you know what it's like in the Premier League? He goes, won the Bundesliga, mate. But you get what I'm saying? There is this rumour at the moment floating around.
See, it's the first time hearing about it, but it makes a lot of sense.
It does, but it doesn't, if that makes sense. So
it's
makes
the only
no
club
sense because we hate Madrid because we are so at odds with each other. But it makes so much sense because he is a generational star.
Bellingham might have fucked you there because Bellingham has made it possible.
If Bellingham hadn't gone, Trent is not even a discussion.
Aesthetically, it now makes sense though.
Aesthetically, it makes sense. Whereas before, it was repulsive.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of I see what you're doing at Madrid. They've kind of unlocked you. Oh, that's weird. You're playing with Carlo, blah, blah, blah. It might be next coach dependent. It might be dependent on the way that, Bellingham pans out post Ancelotti.
By the way, has Bellingham not done the best PR job for Real Madrid in England?
Because, I think beyond England, just everywhere. But I know Madrid were one of the least popular teams in England in terms of I think Madrid were more hated than a lot of City.
Yeah, because the way they do transfers makes you
no one likes.
Alex Ferguson once said, "I wouldn't sell them a virus."
Yeah,
he did then sell them Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yes, and David Beckham,
Andrew Van Nistelrooy.
Yeah,
and Gabriel Heinz.
Right, all of which, if I caught them, I feel like I might be naturally immune. But
Well, remember Gabriel Heinz wants to go to Liverpool.
He did,
and United were like, "No." You can go to
that
Real.
would have been bizarre, by the way. I think that was under the Rafa Benitez.
He's so Benitez.
He's so Rafa.
He's so Benitez.
It's the most Rafa player I've ever seen. Because also he'd been perfect. He was basically older Emiliano Insua.
There was a tackle he made in the Champions League for United, I don't know, against you. And he actually didn't give away a penalty, but it should have been. And he was on his bum, both hands and both legs in the air, appealing his innocence. And the tweet was, "This is the most natural, I've just given away a penalty form of the human body." Yeah. On your ass, hands and legs in the air, protesting your innocence. Yeah.
What do you do if you want to get away with not giving a penalty? So you
don't even acknowledge it.
Yeah, you just have to keep running. At times, it helps to go.
I was going to say a little look of disgust.
It can't be. You cannot bend down and pull their arm. Unless it depends on the player you're doing it with as well. The thing is, if it's Vinicius, it's also what their reaction is. If they're cool about it and you're pulling their arm, you're clearly overselling it. Whereas if they're angry and you're "Oh, get up," like that.
I think the casual get up can be quite guilty, but the furious pulling them up by their nostrils, John Fashanu style,
or Pepe, where he puts his hands under these bits and pulls them up.
Pepe is the famous can give it but can't take it. He also like, and I'm not judging this, but it's just quite a sweet Brazilian thing. So he slept in the same bed as his mum until he was 18. Because it was like a Portuguese, Brazilian.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Like,
I think that's quite sweet.
Yeah, it was quite sweet. But it was because he's like so scary. It was like, he's like.
It kind of makes sense. Like now you've said it, I'm like,
Doesn't also like give his mum an elbow, which you'd imagine, but it's nice to have it confirmed.
He must have been like, so footballers are like pure meat and bone. There's no fat really.
No.
And there's definitely a fat in him. He was like very low body percent.
He's also 41 playing for Porto.
Yeah. Pepe's played for Portugal.
Yeah,
he's Brazilian, maybe naturalized?
I want to say he was born in, Google it. Instinctively, I want to say he's like a Deco.
Pepe, here we go.
In as far as he was born in Brazil. I could be making
Yeah, sorry, you're right. Yeah, my bad.
Was he born in Brazil?
Maybe later, Wikipedia. I don't want to. Maybe later. There you go. He was born in 1983. Where was he born? Place of birth, Brazil.
Yeah, I think that's
Macau.
Right. Yeah.
Macau? Yeah.
But there's lots of Brazilians who play for other places. I mean, Deco, Jorginho.
Costa.
Although Costa played for both. Costa signed for Spain. Spain did the thing where...
A modern signing.
It's like, you know how Scotland always sign players? They were like, we need a goalkeeper, Angus Gunn from Southampton.
Good.
Or they were like, we need the centre forward, Che Adams from Southampton.
I like that. I get what you're saying. He was pure skin and bone. Hard to sleep with in a bed.
Not a lot to
when you
hold on
knock
to.
legs with them. I feel like his mum probably had a lot of bruises in that time. He's probably huge.
Quite shinny as well, like a lot of shins and
shinny, elbows. Just jointy. Like you can catch an elbow pretty easily.
I was going to say, who's the player it would be nicest to share a bed with, but we know the answer already. It's Alisson. I saw once a podcast we have this conversation.
Lovely, yeah.
We go, wouldn't he be a nice guy?
Also because you imagine he'd say goodnight in a really sweet way before, and then he'd turn over the other way, and he'd sleep with his back to you, but it wouldn't be like a cold shoulder.
No.
It would be like, the door would be in front of him, so he'd only be sleeping with his back to you to guard you from what's coming through the door, feng shui style.
He is the most comforting figure in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I'm open to hearing comments on other suggestions.
I mean, there are other comforting figures, but there's no one like him.
Problem with like someone like Virgil van Dijk is he's like too sharp. He's too angular.
There's a bit of like a rounding to Alisson in his features, but also in his beard. Like the beard helps him. If Virgil van Dijk had a beard, we'd see him quite differently, I think.
Yes. He's also got like does Virgil van Dijk have kids? Not to my knowledge. Oh, he does.
He must do. He's 30-something. And I think I've seen him with kids, maybe.
Well,
Alisson definitely has kids because I've literally seen them on his phone.
Which confirms as much as we're going to confirm.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they were a render, but I feel like it would have been weird to render children just to convince me you had kids. So I think they were his. And also that he posts like sweet stories with them. I think he posted like the other day, he posted a selfie of him and his son taking a photo, and his son's like looking at him and he's looking at his son, and it had Randy Newman. Yeah. You've got a friend in me. And I was like, oh.
You know how Mignolet still gets a game for Belgium?
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if like it turned out like Aurelio Gomez was still in the Brazil squad. Oh, yeah. It turned out it was like, that's so international football.
Yeah. It's the most international football you can be. Where I feel like we've explored all of the options for the podcast today. Basically, the title is Manchester United and Newcastle have screwed the Premier League. I think there's still a chance we can do it, but the issue would be how far now Arsenal and City go in the Champions League. City, I'm not saying they'll go out round of 16. They look able to manage games, weirdly, especially in the Champions League. I just can't see them winning it this year. And Arsenal, they're our greatest hope in the Champions League. Weirdly, because I think at the start of the season, you would have put them second, maybe at a push third in terms of our Champions League hopes.
It's weird with the Champions League because sometimes you just know. Like last year, City were favourites.
We all had that feeling.
City were favourites, so it wasn't like anyone was like doing anything crazy by thinking it was City. But it just made sense that it was City. Yeah. This year, it just makes sense that it's Arsenal that go further. I don't think they win it,
but they'll go to the final.
But this way, I think if they got to I think they'll get to the quarterfinal.
Who do Arsenal lose to?
It's usually Bayern Munich, right?
No, but who could? Yeah. So I think there's a potential this season they beat Munich.
That'd be cool.
And they continue the Harry Kane thing. And when they win, they all do the "Who do we hate?"
Isn't not though Gabriel turning off from a corner and Harry Kane scoring?
Sure.
Or the alternative model of that is Ben White pulling down part-time England teammates.
Yeah. Or Leroy Sané, weirdly.
Oh, or Gnabry.
Right.
Or the Gnabry doesn't celebrate at the Emirates,
But scores 3.
but scores and then Arteta gives him a big hug, and then on Twitter everyone's like, "You shouldn't give him a hug."
Shouldn't have. What about? So I still think they win against Munich. I think they win against most teams sub Munich. I think Real Madrid's a challenge.
Real Madrid beat them.
Barcelona they beat.
Barcelona they do beat.
Yeah, I think Barcelona went through. Yeah, like that. City's a hard one. City's like hard to judge because they have beaten City, but over 2 legs. The one leg, like in the Premier League, you can sort of get in and out. 2 legs,
Yeah.
Bit more
But
challenging.
it's interesting when you say it like this. There aren't that many sides in Europe that look so scary.
Real Madrid, Bayern, City, Atletico is a hard one, but beatable.
They might struggle there, yeah.
PSG, they beat PSG, don't
They
they?
beat PSG,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think. And Dortmund, they beat. I think.
Yeah.
Leipzig.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal have a real chance. Also, the other thing about Arsenal is they've been brilliant in Europe this season.
I think they have a chance,
No, I mean, now we're talking about this. I hadn't thought it before.
Nor would I.
But I've talked myself into
They
it.
win it. I think this is a bold prediction. I think Arsenal win the Champions League, but they don't win the Premier League.
Do you think they would take...
I think they'd take that because it means another... If they win the Champions League this season, it's validation. Klopp did it. Other people have done it. And they're going to win the league.
Well, more crucially, okay, it means less now that Chelsea have won a couple. Because before a London team had won it, it was like the Holy Grail.
Arsenal win the Champions League.
I actually can't disagree with you.
Well, you can.
But like, as in, but I don't think they've got any more or less chance than Bayern or Real. I think they're similar types of
I think
sides.
they're similar. I mean, obviously, statistically, there's probably, or like, odds-wise, I think City, Real Madrid and Bayern are better.
Do you think Arsenal are fourth according to the bookies?
Probably. Well, let's see, actually. I don't know. Can I find odds this quick?
I've got this.
Yeah.
Champions League winner odds.
Who's on it?
Okay, who's the favourite?
Real Madrid. No, City.
City.
City, then Real Madrid. City, Real Madrid, Bayern, Arsenal.
Almost exactly right. City, Bayern, Real, very similar. 5-1, 6-1.
Bayern are
Ahead of
more
Real.
favourites than Real Madrid.
But listen to these odds though. Bayern are 5-1. City are 2.5-1. So they've got City as heavy favourites.
They are the current champions.
Yeah, but that feels...
Doesn't make sense, does it?
Who's after Arsenal? It's a big... Arsenal 8-1.
Big drop-off.
Big drop-off to 14.
Napoli. No, wait. Barca.
Yes, bang.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is a fun game. At 16-1 after Barca.
16-1 after Barcelona would be...
You've got City, Bayern...
Atletico Madrid.
No. They're Frencher than that.
PSG, sorry. My bad. Yeah.
Then it goes...
Then it's Atletico.
Inter, Atletico... Bristol.
Inter. I completely forgot about Inter because Inter went through on the bottom group on my listing here. That's why.
You know what's interesting though is
Then there's like Benfica and all that lot.
the only team that's so there's 150-1 bunch of teams, 250-1, and then one team on 500-1. Bless him. Copenhagen.
Not worth the outside bet.
Not.
That's also it's not financial or gambling advice.
I put a tenner on Wimbledon winning the FA Cup when we got to one game off the quarters. We beat West Ham.
I like that.
I know, and we had Millwall home.
Someone said that Wimbledon. So I was looking at rankings of atmospheres in England. Someone said Wimbledon have the worst.
Oh, we don't have the worst. We have a
Triggered?
We have a very decent atmosphere. We're not brilliant.
But you're not the worst. I looked at it and I felt upset because Are
you sure it wasn't like tennis events?
No.
Because
They called Liverpool Tin Pot though, and I was like, all right, yeah, just baiting.
Our atmosphere is pretty typical, I'd say. It's like when we're winning, it's great. When we're not winning, it's not brilliant.
I get you.
It's like a typical...
Yeah. You're mid-level at the moment.
I gotta say, when it's good, it's great. But I've been to 51 grounds in the country. I'd say we are, of those 51, we're probably like...
25.
No, we're a little bit better than that.
You're top 25?
Well, as opposed to bottom 25, yeah, we're top 25.
Okay. Well, there you go. Wimbledon, the best atmosphere in England. Thank you very much, James. Arsenal to win the Champions League. I think that's the real takeaway I'm going to get from this.
I love that I'm convinced by it as well.
I know. Feels very convincing.
I just don't see aesthetically Bayern or City or Real. Maybe Real.
Appreciate you guys. It's been really good fun. I'll chat to you again in a little while. Thanks a lot for joining us on The Graphic.